From a series of interconnected man-made islands to a massive skyscraper that would have been the tallest building in the world, it can be easy to mistake these images as another one of Dubai's insane megaprojects. But this actually isn't from Dubai, nor anywhere else in the Middle East. These are Azerbaijan's ambitious Khazar Islands. And today, more than a decade since it was unveiled to the public, only a few undeveloped islands and unfinished buildings remain on site. So what actually happened here? Have the islands actually been completely abandoned? And could this project ever be revived in the future? Hi, I'm Regis, and today we take a look at Azerbaijan's $100 billion failed islands. Azerbaijan is a country you probably haven't heard that much about. Technically landlocked from the rest of the world's oceans, it's located at the crossroads of Europe and Asia. And compared to, say, the United Arab Emirates or Saudi Arabia, it isn't exactly the first place you'd think of when it comes to insane luxury coastal developments, especially not with a skyscraper that would dwarf the height of even the Burj Khalifa. However, though the country may be relatively unknown when it comes to construction and mega projects like this one, that doesn't necessarily mean that they don't have the resources to actually do it. Just looking at the skyline of Azerbaijan's capital, Baku, you can clearly see that they know how to build their fair share of towers and skyscrapers. And compared to some of its neighbors and other former Soviet countries, Azerbaijan's actually pretty rich. And most of this accumulated wealth could directly be attributed to one single natural resource. The very same resource that built the Dubais, Qatars, and Saudi Arabia of the world: oil. Azerbaijan was producing so much of the resource that at one point in the early 1900s, this small country actually accounted for more than half of the entire world's supply of oil. And ever since they gained independence after the fall of the Soviet Union in 1991, the country's oil industry has steadily grown and opened to the rest of the Western world. One major piece of infrastructure that catapulted Azerbaijan as a leading oil exporter was the opening of a 1,700-kilometer pipeline in 2006 that runs all the way from Baku to the Mediterranean coast in Turkey. This provides Europe with direct access to Azerbaijan's abundant oil reserves and brings in billions upon billions of dollars in revenue to the small country. But despite all this wealth and success, something seemed to be missing. Azerbaijan was swimming in all of their oil money. However, they didn't really have anything to get people talking or to draw in more potential investment from the rest of the world. But one Azerbaijani businessman wanted to change that. His name was Ibrahim Ibrahimov, and on one of his flights from Dubai home to Baku back in 2010, inspiration struck. Grabbing a piece of paper from his bag, he scribbled down his plans for an entire city development in just under 20 minutes. And immediately after touching down in Baku, he went straight to his architects and handed over his sketch, saying, "Draw this exactly the way that I did." Now, that's quite ambitious and maybe even crazy. But this vision and 20-minute sketch is what eventually became the detailed plans for the Khazar Islands, an insane megaproject that Ibrahimov hoped will finally put Azerbaijan into the spotlight. The development was planned to be built just south of Baku, over on the Caspian Sea. It would consist of a total of 55 artificial islands, which would all be connected to each other by a vast array of more than 150 bridges. The islands themselves would house thousands of apartments, 8 high-end hotels, luxury shops and restaurants, an equestrian center, a yacht club, and even an entire Formula One racetrack. And if you think this is starting to sound a lot like Dubai's Palm Islands, you're right. Though Ibrahimov himself has constantly insisted that the Khazar Islands aren't modeled after Dubai, the similarities are striking, and maybe even irrefutable. Both are a set of artificial islands built by the coast of their respective cities and are marketed as luxury destinations for the wealthy elite. However, the similarities don't end with just the islands themselves. Even all these grand plans were nothing compared to what Ibrahimov had envisioned as the centerpiece of this already insane megaproject. He wanted Azerbaijan to be noticed by the rest of the world. And what better way to do it than to create the tallest building the world has ever seen? It worked for Dubai, so in theory, it could work for Baku. This is the Azerbaijan Tower. At more than a kilometer in height, it would have easily become the tallest building in the world, shattering the previous record set by Dubai's Burj Khalifa by more than 200 meters. But what's even more interesting is that when these plans were unveiled to the public back in 2011, the Burj Khalifa wasn't the only skyscraper it was set to overtake. Even Saudi Arabia's Jeddah Tower, which was planned to be 1,008 meters tall, would still be slightly smaller than this one. As you can see, we've created our own 3D model of this skyscraper. This was a lot of work, so we'd really appreciate your feedback in the comments. Make sure to subscribe to MegaBuilds for more videos similar to this one, but now, back to the topic. The Azerbaijan Tower was meant to be used for a mix of business and office space, along with a wide range of luxury residential and hotel units. It was estimated that this building alone would cost over $2 billion, while the rest of the Khazar Islands was going to be at least $100 billion to fully construct. Impressively, the skyscraper, along with all of the islands, were also planned to be earthquake-proof, reportedly being able to withstand as much as a magnitude 9.0 earthquake. The entire project was initially estimated to be completed in just 15 years and separated into 3 different phases of construction. The first one being the actual creation of the artificial islands themselves, along with all the necessary roads, bridges, and infrastructure to go along with it. The second phase includes the construction of residential developments, as well as the centerpiece 1-kilometer tall skyscraper. Finally, the third phase rounds up all the remaining facilities and amenities in the area, such as malls, restaurants, and various other shops. Surprisingly, construction on the project actually began in March 2011, despite the short timeline and an apparent lack of funds. Over the next few years, the first phase of the development was actually well underway. The main beach area of the property was even open to the public back in 2014, with a handful of buildings already completed. On the other hand, work on the Azerbaijan Tower and the rest of the second phase was scheduled to begin in 2015, with the centerpiece estimated to be completed just 4 years later in 2019. However, it's now been 5 years since the initial estimated completion date for the Azerbaijan Tower. And as far as we know, the Burj Khalifa is still the tallest building in the world. So, what happened? What went so terribly wrong with this mega project that we've basically heard nothing about it for all these years? Just as oil is a non-renewable resource that will eventually be depleted, so is the wealth that comes along with it. By 2010, Azerbaijan had already hit its peak oil production, and the following years weren't any better. The rest of the global oil industry wasn't doing pretty well either, as oil prices started to plummet around 2014 and 15. This normally wouldn't have been a major issue for any other country, but considering that oil and gas exports account for more than 50% of Azerbaijan's entire GDP, you can see how this would have been a major blow to their economy. By 2015, the year when construction on the Azerbaijan Tower was supposed to begin, the country's currency, the manat, had already devalued by as much as 30%, and it continued to do so through the end of the year. But the final blow to the entire project came when an arrest warrant was issued for Ibrahimov in 2015 in relation to unpaid debts to the National Bank, the same money he used to fund his ambitious plans for the Khazar Islands. He was shortly released on bail just 15 days later, but the damage had already been done. Construction on the Azerbaijan Tower was eventually cancelled altogether. The rest of the Khazar Islands seem to have also suffered the same fate, as the project was indefinitely paused around the same time. And honestly, this isn't a big surprise. Building a kilometer-tall skyscraper is a crazy difficult undertaking. After all, nobody's actually done it before. And although it's theoretically possible to create a structure with such height, it's going to be very difficult from a financial, logistical, and engineering perspective. Saudi Arabia's Jeddah Tower, for example, suffered more than 5 years of delays after its main financial backer was arrested. A very similar situation that the Azerbaijan Tower also faced in the past. Another related example is the United Arab Emirates Dubai Creek Tower, which had to be completely redesigned and significantly scaled down, all just for the project to not be cancelled altogether. But even if all these problems never happened, and the entire project was still completed as planned and on schedule, there was still one major issue that would have likely caused it to ultimately fail. Is a mega project of this size actually something that Azerbaijan needed? Or was it just wishful thinking from another wealthy businessman who didn't know any better? The Khazar Islands have a striking resemblance to Dubai's artificial islands. At their core, both projects are essentially trying to do the same thing, with both being high-profile property developments from an oil-reliant state trying to diversify their economy. However, we've already seen what happened to Dubai's islands, as they ultimately failed to be completed in the way they were intended to be. And if Dubai, arguably the world's leader when it comes to luxury living, couldn't find success with their world islands, how is Azerbaijan gonna fare any better? It's not like millions of people will suddenly just fly to the country and invest in their project. So what happens now? Almost a decade after Ibrahimov's arrest back in 2015, there's been almost no news surrounding the future of the project. According to a statement from Ibrahimov's company in 2015, the development was still scheduled to be completed between 2020 and 2025, saying that Chinese investors are still keen on financing the project. However, satellite images of the construction site today seem to be showing the complete opposite. With only a few unfinished buildings and roads dotting the area, not even the first phase of construction has actually been completed. Nothing on site also seems to point to the fact that an entire 1 kilometer tall skyscraper was meant to be constructed here. No foundations have ever been dug out, and it kind of seems like the whole area has just been left abandoned. As of 2019, the site for the project has already been taken over by the Azerbaijan Industrial Corporation, a state-owned property management company, and they've reportedly started feasibility studies on the site, looking for potential alternative developments and investors to make use of all the land that was meant for the Khazar Islands. However, the results of these studies have never been revealed to the public. Given the current situation of the country, with dwindling oil reserves and a world that's slowly transitioning away from fossil fuels, the future of the Khazar Islands and the Azerbaijan Tower seems to be a distant reality. What do you think about the Khazar Islands and the Azerbaijan Tower? Do you think they'll ever be completed? Let us know in the comments below. If you want to see more about other super tall skyscrapers, you should watch our video about the Dubai Creek Tower. As always, thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.